Welcome to Inside the Sales Playbook show, where on each and every episode, we dive into the actual sales processes, the plays, the strategies working for teams today. No high-level overview or fluff. We get into the weeds of what some of the fastest growing and most successful sales teams are doing today to drive revenue and grow their businesses. And our sponsor of today's show is Sales Kit. As a CEO, as a founder, as an entrepreneur, few things are more important than having a scalable, repeatable sales process. But where do you even start? Where do you even begin? Well, worry no longer. Sales Kit is here and helps you take that process that's stuck in your head as that founder or CEO and puts it in a place that your entire sales team can use so it's scalable and repeatable. You can get a free trial at getsaleskit.com. I'm your host, Mark Evans, and today I'm here with Mr. Shaheem Alam. Shaheem, welcome to the show. I'm really excited to have you on.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here.
Awesome. Well, Shaheem is the co-founder of Five Rings Marketing. And how about you give the listeners a little bit of context, Shaheem? What is Five Rings Marketing and how do you help your clients achieve their mission?
Yeah, for sure. So we are essentially an outsourced SDR firm. So we work mainly with B2B SaaS companies and help them with a few different things. I mean, essentially it's about getting sales, getting them meetings with decision makers.
Yeah.
But kind of below the surface, peeling back a little bit, what we do is really help them figure out, okay, what are the right personas? What are the right messaging? What's going to work? What doesn't work? And we use kind of our tactics to help them really discover their market, find product market fit, and ultimately, build their pipeline so they can close deals.
Awesome. And, if you're on LinkedIn at all, there's no shortage of companies, reaching out and saying, hey, we can offer a service kind of similar. So, Shaheem, let's start there. How do you stand out in a pretty crowded, maybe crowded is not the right word, but a really highly competitive market?
Yeah, no, for sure. It's a fair point. I myself get messages all the time on LinkedIn. Hey, we're gonna help book meetings with decision makers. So,
Great.
one of the big differentiators with us is that we're a lot more involved compared to just a plug and play kind of engagement. Our if you look at my banner on LinkedIn, it says we are your in-house outsourced sales teams. And really what we want to do is be as if we're a part of your internal sales team, right? Like we're in our client Slack channels where their account manager, they have a dedicated account manager. You can reach out to them via call, text, Slack, whatever the case might be. So we want to be available as if we are an internal sales team. And so we're constantly, managing campaigns. We're involved. We're making changes. We meet with our clients weekly, bi-weekly, things like that. So our involvement is much greater, and that's what differentiates us. And I think the other thing that differentiates us is we understand that most of these early stage startups, yes, what they think they want is sales, right? But really, well, you still have to figure out who your customer is. You still have to figure out what kind of messaging is resonating. So we do a lot of experimental testing to find that niche, find that persona and the messaging where it's going to resonate the most. And I think that's a lot of the work that we do for our clients, which they're ultimately hiring us for.
Yeah.
Even though they think they're hiring us for sales, right?
That's such a great point too, because especially for startups and I myself who runs a company that's relatively young, right? I love how you said before, right? It's almost more important to figure out, well, who is your customer? Where is that product market fit than it is to get a couple of early, let's call it even cheesy, not cheesy, but like easier wins, right? Where they're not going to give you as much learning and necessarily as much fuel to grow moving forward. So I really, really like that. But Shaheem, how about you take us back to the beginning, man? Of all the things that you could have done, you're a smart guy. Why the hell did you even choose sales in this whole entrepreneurship game?
Yeah, I guess I'll tell a bit of my story.
Yeah,
So
please.
when I was actually 14, my father had passed away. So and I'm the oldest of three siblings. So it was my mom, two younger brothers, and then after high school, I went into university. I was at University of Toronto. I was studying psychology and neuroscience on this automated path, basically, right? Didn't really know what I was in there for. But it came to a point where financially my family was, we were in trouble, right? We were struggling. So I had to, after my third year, actually leave school and start working. So I hopped online, started looking for jobs. And then one of the interviews I did was actually for a door-to-door sales job.
Okay.
Now, 2 years before that, I did door to door for a charity, and I got fired because I didn't meet the quotas. Okay, so I got fired after 2 weeks of working there.
Wow.
So that I had that kind of in the back of my head. Like I always wanted to redeem myself for that,
Yeah.
right? That was number one. Number two, I went out on the field with my manager at the time, and the commissions were we were selling furnaces, air conditioners, and water treatment systems for homes, and the commission was $600 a pop. And I
Wow.
saw them sell a furnace and an AC in one house, kind of like last door of the day, right? We're
Yeah.
knocking for like 8 hours. The last door he makes that sale. I'm like, this guy just made $1,200 in one day. Like that's insane,
That's
right?
legit. Yeah.
It's so crazy. So my goal at the time was I was going to save a year's worth of rent for my mom and then go back to school. So I'm like, okay, if I can make commissions like this, I'm going to be able to achieve my goal much faster. So then I decided to give it a shot. First 3 weeks made zero, like no money at all. It was 100% commission, right?
Okay.
First 3 weeks, I'm out there working 6 days a week. I make nothing. And then eventually, though, after learning and listening to Brian Tracy's Psychology of Selling, talking to my managers, finally got my first sale. And then it was just kind of upwards from there, right? Like when you get results, it becomes addicting. And that's where I started getting that rush of, okay, I like sales. I can
Love
do
it.
this.
That's
Eventually,
awesome.
built the sales team and whatnot. And yeah,
So did you save enough to get, I mean, you can't leave me on the hook like that. Did you save up enough for your mom's
I,
rent?
I did actually. So I started in April, and I think it was by the end of the summer, I had that year's worth of rent saved. Which
That's awesome. That is pretty cool. Yeah, there's no quite motivator like something like that, right? To help your mom out in that situation. It speaks a lot towards your character, and just how sales can be used as a leverage and really a fulcrum for life changing growth, right? Whether it's paying for your mom's rent, or I don't know, providing a better life for your kids. There's few careers, in my opinion, that have that like life changing impact when it comes to money and it comes to sales.
absolutely.
Well, you see, so what I really want to get into on this episode, Shaheem, since you guys are running a lot of different campaigns for different organizations, I really want to get into what the playbook looks like for success. So, like what Shaheem and I talked about before on the show, no trade secrets here, but what is a play that you are doing on behalf of your clients or your clients are doing, whether it's a strategy or a technique or something like that, that's really working and having success now that you could share with our audience?
Yeah, for sure. And so what we mainly do, our main core of our services is LinkedIn outreach, right? Now to support LinkedIn, we also have email, we also have cold calling, but the core of it is LinkedIn. So it all really starts off with defining the persona, because at the end of the day, sequences are automated, right? But then we also know that personalization works.
Yeah.
So you need to be able to define your persona so precisely that the messaging that the automated sequence you create still seems personalized because your target market is so specific, right? So for example, if I'm reaching out to, I wouldn't just spray, like an AK spraying, for VP of engineering all across the world, for example,
Yeah.
right? Like I wouldn't do that. I would look for a specific type of engineering role or within a specific type of industry. And then my messaging can now be tailored and talk about that industry, their role, what are their pain points and things like that. So it has to be really specific. So, that's where we always start off, is with a very detailed customer profile.
Hmm.
And then the approach that we take, it's a multi-channel approach where there's going to be LinkedIn touch points as well as email touch points. And it's very conversational. Selling on LinkedIn, it used to work a few years ago.
Yeah.
It doesn't work anymore.
Yeah,
Right?
that's what I'm like kind of curious about, right? I get a bunch of messages. Sounds like you get a bunch of messages. So like, let's go to that just kind of core question. Like, does LinkedIn, like, does it work for outbound lead gen, appointment setting, and sales?
Yes, I mean it
Yes, it
works.
does. Okay. So,
It works.
because I
Um,
find myself questioning it sometimes when I'm seeing like different messages coming in. It's like, gosh, is this like, do I even want to be another voice on here? Yeah. Okay. So it is working. So yeah, walk us more into that.
for sure. The thing is, with this kind of approach, you have to be conversational. You have to have a softer approach. You can't go out there and just say, "Hey, we do this. This is all. We work with this many clients. We've got them this much ROI, and we're going to do the same exact thing for you."
Yeah.
There's tons of those essays. I receive them all the time. You probably receive them,
Yeah.
and the people that were reaching out to these VPs, C-level directors, like they receive even more than you and I probably do, right?
Hmm.
From tons of vendors. So you have to stand out from the crowd. And, the approach that really works here is when instead of doing that, and especially because we work with early stage founders, like really asking more for their thoughts or their feedback, their guidance on the solution we're developing that's solving some use cases that they're dealing with, right? So if I can tell you, hey, listen, I'm looking to get some guidance and feedback on these specific use cases. I know you're a domain expert. I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Let's get on a call. Now that initial discovery call, when our clients get on it, they're able to now dive into their challenges and learn about their specific situations, hear their thoughts on the platform, and if there's any kind of synergy, if there's any kind of match, then that'll happen on that call,
Nice.
right? So it's really like taking that soft approach of like, I'm just hoping to get your guide. I'm hoping to validate some use cases with you, right? Instead of I'm trying to do all of this crazy stuff and I'm selling you the dream.
I really like that. It reminds me of an old saying that they have I think it's in like software, right? Where if you ask for money, you'll get advice. And if you ask for advice, you'll get money. And I think that's the same approach of just this conversational marketing of asking for some advice. Your validated use case, I think is brilliant. That's really good. Let's go back to one other questions I had in here. So with a startup, oftentimes startups have difficulty really knowing who their ideal customer profile is, who their buyer is, right? What are some strategies you would give to someone who's listening out there that has a product, right? They're maybe trudging along in their market, but they're not quite sure if they found their buyer. What kind of advice do you have for someone in that specific case?
So a big thing that a lot of startups don't do is customer discovery. And if you look at lean startup and all of that good stuff, it talks a lot about doing customer discovery before we even develop a product, right? Now, what a lot of companies do is they'll develop a product and then try to figure out their customer afterwards. So if you're in that situation and you have a product, it requires experimentation. You have to, number one, okay, define who are you solving the problem. Well, what problem are you solving? Who are you solving it for? And now that will maybe boil it down to a few different personas, right? And then you have to have those conversations. Like you can only do so much hypothesizing, right? You have to get out there, do the outreach, get in touch with these different people and see, and again, validate the use cases. Like validate, does this actually solve a problem for them? And if it doesn't, well, who does it solve a problem for? And it's a lot of experimentation, and you got to have those conversations.
That's probably why vehicles like LinkedIn, cold email work so well to go out and validate that message, because you could just create inbound pieces of marketing that are going to attract your buyer, right? Like this seems like almost tailor made to really try to figure that out through outbound. Would you agree with that or no?
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing with those inbound, if you put out ads, right? I
Hmm.
think initially any startup will probably put some ideas into ads and see if they're getting clicks or signups to validate, the idea. But again, even with ads, you have to target personas. You have to know who you're targeting. Where are you targeting? And you don't know, you might just be wasting a lot of money. Ads are expensive, especially on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, right? Like it's very expensive. So you're going to burn a lot of cash trying to get inbound. I think inbound comes later once you've defined that persona and that need and what messaging really works. It starts off with the outreach.
Yeah, I really like that. Well, I know that your organization, Five Rings Marketing, is a really fast growing organization. You're adding sales members and sales team members. What does your onboarding and training process look like to really get your team up to speed so that they can start getting results for your clients?
Yeah. So, well, number one, the same way that we get clients is the same way we help our clients get clients,
So
right?
you're drinking your own champagne.
Exactly,
Love
exactly.
it.
So we do the same thing: LinkedIn, email, cold calling, outreach. So when we hire a salesperson, we train them on, of course, we train them on what exactly the services that we do, what are the value props, and we train them to really understand who is, again, it goes back to understanding the persona. Like, who are we reaching out to? Who are these people you're actually talking to? What situation are they in? So that once they kind of grasp that, okay, this is probably a technical founder that I'm speaking to who doesn't have sales experience, who just really needs help understanding this whole go to market thing is very daunting. They can code
Hmm.
for days and it's not a problem. Coding is daunting for me.
Yeah.
But when they think about go to market, they're just like, they don't know what to do. They're lost, right? that's who you're speaking to. So you really have to come off as someone as an advisor, and you have to come off as, someone that is helping them find that product market fit, find that you're helping them with their whole go to market strategy. And this could be one of those companies, that end up being have valuation of like $1 billion. Like, you don't
Yeah.
know, but you're an integral part of that. So first, helping them understand that, and then of course, there's the training on the pitch, the process, the discovery call. What are the next steps after that? How you should follow up, and the whole sales process. That's something that is trained not just at the beginning but repetitive.
Hmm.
With my sales guys, I've trained, back in the door-to-door days, I had a team of 30 commission only sales reps. So these guys are out there knocking doors with no guarantee of making money,
Wow.
and they'll have their pitch memorized, but it doesn't matter. Like, every day you're coming into the office at 10 a.m, we're doing pitch practice. I don't care if you have it memorized, we're doing it, because one of the things that I learned was repetition is the definition of learning, and especially in sales, repetition, repetition, repetition. Like, it's key. So that's something we focus heavily on with our AEs.
Yeah.
Um, is that repetition?
Oh, I love that. I think that's so smart, right? Pro athletes practice. Just about every other profession has some element of practicing before they
Yeah.
make it onto the field. And I think that is so, so smart. I really, really like that. What's some advice you would have for an organization, or for, let's go back to that startup, right? That's looking to really try to make a dent in the universe, and they're just frustrated, right? Whether they're a technical founder, besides looking up your firm and getting their help, what are some other things that they could do in order to help grow their product, grow their company in the first couple, let's say the first year or two of business?
Yeah. I think that usually the CEO is also the salesperson. Most organizations are like the first salesperson.
Yeah.
So I think they need to put themselves out there, and have those conversations themselves, even if it's on a more manual, case by case, like very small scale approach. But definitely they need to have those conversations, and put themselves out there to see if what they're building is, something that's solving a real problem, and validating that. Number two, some of our clients, what they do is they have advisors, right? They will have go to market advisors that they're working with. Not necessarily a full board member on their team, but someone that knows how to take a startup to market. Because you need to hire, when you don't know what to do, or when you're not an expert in something, you got to hire someone smarter than you, right?
Yep.
So you
Hmm.
gotta, yeah. So they need to work with advisors. And what we found is that when startups come to us with a really strong idea of those personas, and I keep going back to that because it's just so important. But when they come to us with a strong understanding of their personas, the results are so much better. And if they can do that groundwork themselves in the beginning at a small scale, it will help them so much in their when they decide to start sales and scale sales.
Yeah, I could really imagine too. And then when you want to start scaling, whether it's inbound marketing, right? Whether it's creating white papers or any sort of other content, if it's
Yeah.
crafted and curated for that one individual, it makes it far more easier. And I know right. That's all you hear is like, hey, don't sell to everybody, but try to sell to one. It's not as easy as it always sounds, right? And it's certainly, so I really like, hey,
And,
you're hyper focused on that.
and I'll give you a perfect example.
Yeah.
One of our current clients, that's our campaigns are performing like amazingly for, like, I'm talking like 30, 40 meetings a month, right? And these are like qualified meetings. They came to us in July of last year, so about
Hmm.
7 months ago. And what they said, hey, here are all of the personas that we think that we know exist. We want the data. All they wanted was the data. They're like, get us a lead list of all these people within our industry, and we're gonna dive deep into each of these roles. So what they did was they actually spent a few months, and of course they were building the product at the same time, but they spent a few months just really digging deep and understanding, out of all of these different roles in their industry, in their target industry, what do they actually go after? Like, which ones would it actually make sense for? And then they came to us afterwards. They said, okay, now that we figured this out, here's our priority of personas that we want to go after and test. We have a much better understanding. Let's do it. And then we kickstarted it, and it's honestly our highest performing campaign right now.
That's awesome. That's very, very cool. I really like that. Do you see this model successful just with like SaaS-based companies, or with, can it also translate into like professional services, manufacturing? Are there businesses where this outbound, I would say like this outbound, not aggressive, but just like, hey, we're gonna be proactive. We're gonna go out there, make the calls, send the emails, do the LinkedIn connection requests and LinkedIn messages. Are there industries you see this not not working at? And can you speak to that at all?
Yeah. In our experience as well, especially at an early stage, we had a couple clients where we realized this with it's if your ticket price is small, like if your annual contract value is like $2,000,
Yeah.
$5,000, and you need to make money basically off of a high volume of customers, rather than one customer paying you 100K a year.
Hmm.
Uh, I think in those situations, inbound and marketing and that approach is much better investment of dollars, compared to outbound,
So the
because
ROI just isn't there. The economics just aren't there.
it just isn't there, and that's why one of the questions we always ask in our discovery calls with our clients is, well, what is your annual contract value? And if you're going to tell me it's $10,000, it's not worth it. Like,
Sure.
it's not worth it for you to do this. If it's okay, 30, 40, 100 above, and you're selling to enterprises, okay, now it makes sense.
That makes a lot more sense, right? Because then you're looking at, all right, well, if we just get 10 sales this year, right, and they're probably going to take a little bit longer, but if we get those 10, right, that could be $1 million, I don't know, maybe recurring revenue or something like that. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I could definitely see that. Well, Shaheem, I think this is a great point to let's transition and close with the final 5. So these will be 5 rapid fire questions that I'll ask and you answer. Are you ready?
Let's do it.
Awesome. Here we go. Favorite sales related movie?
Favorite sales? This is tough. Okay, Wolf of Wall Street.
Wolf of Wall Street. These are sometimes the hardest questions of the entire interview. Give me a favorite sales book.
The Psychology of Selling, Brian Tracy.
Psychology. You mentioned it before. I was wondering if that was going to come back up. I like it. What do you know now that you wish you would have known when you first got into sales, when you got your first door knocking job?
When I first got it, I think you can be a lot more assertive than you think you can be. Like, there's a lot more room to, I don't want to say pushy, but there's just a lot more room to close than you than you initially think there is. And you can ask a lot more questions. I mean, and I don't know if it's a little bit of a long-winded answer, but I'll be quick.
Keep it going.
Yeah. So, what's something I tell my sales guys is they say, like, hey, Shaheem, like, and I ask them a question, like, they'll tell me the situation with a prospect and they'll say, okay, like, this is in this situation and they're not really proceeding. I'm like, well, why? They're like, well, I think it's because of this. I think it's because of that. It's like, well, did you ask? Right? It's like, just ask. Like, you can just ask your prospects the questions and they're going to answer. So you have a lot more control and a lot more room to ask questions, learn so much more, and then just go for the close. And is that whole space, it's like when you first start, you're very nervous to explore and ask too many questions and seem like
you don't want to offend. Yeah, I totally get that. I really like that. There's a lot more room on the table to get your questions asked, because at the end of the day, you're just asking questions, right, and getting that information. I think that's really solid. Give me a favorite purchase, can be business or personal, over the past year under $100.
Favorite purchase under $100 in the past year, other than my LinkedIn Sales Navigator subscription.
Hey, you can go with that if that's a favorite of yours.
Yeah, I mean, to help our business right off the bat, that's the only thing I can think of. I mean, we've made a lot of purchases, but yeah,
that's a big one.
Yeah.
Awesome. Give me a favorite follow. Can be someone on social media, can be an executive or a CEO or anybody like that, a business personality that you're getting a lot of value from.
Secret Entourage on Instagram.
Secret Entourage on Instagram. We'll have to check that out and we'll link to them in the show notes. Shaheem, where can our listener... What's that?
And I was saying, like, he's very no BS. He just gives it to you straight. He's saying it's going to take 10 years to be successful. He's not telling you, he's not selling you a dream of overnight success.
I love that. More people need to hear that. I really like that. Shaheem, where can our listeners connect with you?
So they can connect with me on LinkedIn, Shaheem Alam, that's my name. So LinkedIn would be the easiest. And in my about section, my email is there, Shaheem@5ringsmarketing.com. My phone number is there too. So yeah, LinkedIn would be the best way.
Give him a call, send him a text as well. Awesome. Shaheem, this is a great interview. I really enjoyed you taking us inside your sales playbook. That's Shaheem Alam with 5 Rings Marketing. Shaheem, thanks so much, man. This was great.
Thank you. I had a good time too.